The Pro Show is brought to you by Rockin Media and our proprietary Flash HDR photo process, providing you with the best, most realistic photos of your property. See the difference at rockinmedia.com. Welcome to the Pro Show. Hi, I'm Rick Machle from Rockin Media, and today is our 10th episode, and I want to thank Rick Machle from Real Property Management for being on all 10 shows and hopefully many more into the future. He's given us a lot of valuable information, as have all the professionals on this show, and our real estate professionals are going to be talking to you about what you should look for in a buyer's agent. In addition, they're going to be telling you the pros and cons of living in the suburbs, and they also have some great properties for sale that you're going to want to stay tuned to see. That's next on The Pro Show. And today we have four awesome Coldwell Banker agents. We have Laverne Brookie from the west side of town. We have Debbie Jacobs from Southeast Metro. We have Lori Delaney up on the North Metro area. And then Carrie Holmes up in Northern Colorado. Hi, everyone. One of the decisions you're going to have to make typically is, do I need a buyer's agent? And then what should I expect from them? And then we'll talk a little bit about how they get compensated. We talked a lot about that a few weeks ago relative to the new buyer's agency agreement. But I'm a buyer. I just want to go around and I come into an open house and I say, wow, this is the home for me. I haven't really been represented by a buyer's agent yet. Can I just work with you as the listing agent, or should I get my own representation?
So with the last two transactions, I've actually had an unrepresented buyers come into the open house and say exactly that. Will you represent me? Well, the very first thing that has to happen is I need to have the seller's buy-in as to whether or not they will allow me to move into what's called transaction brokerage. But one of the risks, and I'm sure everybody's going to have basically the same comments, is one of the risks to that buyer is that without representation, they are relying on their own information and their own visual inspection and lots of other details. It may not be in their best interest.
Carrie?
Absolutely. I think buyers need to keep in mind that we do this 365 days a year, 24/7, and many of us for years and years and years. So we're bringing that background and experience. We're looking at the things that, first of all, it goes back to you don't know what you don't know. So it just goes back to all those different variables that we help along the way. There's a lot more to it than just opening the door.
So you're not just driving them around and saying, go on in, and then maybe writing up a contract. Laverne, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have to give them the buyer's agency relationship form and explain to them the different agencies available to them. Generally, when I do that and a buyer is unrepresented, they start thinking that, hey, I probably need to get my own representation, my own advocacy. So, it's really up to them. And trust is, at the end of the day, it becomes, an indication of trust. And if that buyer feels like they want to move forward, then that's fine. But as long as there's complete transparency, then we can move forward. But generally, the buyers, after we go over the buyer's agency relationships, then they start realizing, hey, I probably need an agent.
So, Lori, do you think that it's best to have your own agent as a buyer?
Well, I'm kind of gonna be the devil's advocate and maybe disagree with all of you guys because I've got a fair amount of transaction brokerage where I have my own listing. In fact, this just happened yesterday. So I have my own listing, and then someone walks in, and it's not their first rodeo. Maybe they've bought a lot of houses before. This is the type of situation where maybe, if they do ask you to be their broker, transaction broker, and not represent them, but be a transaction broker, so that I always, first of all, with my listing presentations, I always get permission from my sellers to become a transaction broker should this happen, because I hold a lot of open houses and I've had a lot go under contract during them. So I talk to them and I say, hey, I would be happy to do that, but it's going to be more of a neutral situation. They're like, hey, that's fine. We've bought and sold a lot of houses. and you build a rapport, and you know the listing agent, which is the first thing that buyer's agents should do, is reach out to a listing agent and find what's important to that seller in terms of an offer, time frame, price, what do they need time to find a replacement home? I mean, there's a lot of things involved other than, yes, just opening a door. So I definitely believe a buyer should have, a buyer's agent, unless they decide to kind of look on their own, and they're very adept at seeking out a home and connecting with a listing agent who can become a transaction broker. Not everybody can do that successfully, but I have had success in my past doing that because I remain neutral and a resource to both sides.
So, Laverne, what do buyer's agents do? What are some of the tasks, or one or two, and then we can ask others?
Yeah, the first, they, of course, provide, information as far as, the steps to buying a property, make sure that they get pre-qualified, make sure they're working with somebody reputable. And then, of course,
as far as a lender, right? Reputable
as a lender, yes.
Okay.
And other resources too. But, most buyers find their home.
Okay.
Because they're out there pounding the pavement too. That is a huge part of a buyer's agent, is finding the home. But I think the biggest part is, okay, now we found this property, let's do a evaluation. What is this really worth? What do you want out of the property? What are your motivations? Find out, as a buyer's agent, find out what the seller's motivation, if you could get that information. Then, of course, there's negotiations. And then there's the entire process of the transaction. Going through the inspection process with them, that's a whole nother level of inspection or negotiations. So, it's not just finding the home. Like I said, most buyers find their own home, and then we start rolling the engine from there.
So, Carrie, I know that on a lot of, you probably take your buyers out to see different homes as they're touring. What are you looking for maybe that they might not be looking for when they're just trying to fall in love with their house?
Well, and absolutely, that can happen a lot of times, where buyers come in and they're looking at the beautiful countertops and the gorgeous hardwood floors, where I'm walking around and looking at things like that roof. Do we have peeling paint? Different things like that. How is the foundation? Different variables like that. So they don't get sidetracked by looking at all the bells and whistles. Now, that's an incredibly important part of it, but it's just my job to point out these different things so we can be mindful of them, and then guiding them once we do. Let's just say maybe there are a couple things that we notice and we talk about before we make an offer. They can have that information on the onset before we do have a home inspection on the property. Now, when we do have that home inspection, I think it's really important to give my clients multiple resources of inspectors that I've worked with in the past that I know have confidence, that have my client's best interest in mind, that are really going over that home with a fine-tooth comb, so we can negotiate, make sure we're getting them a solid property that's going to be a good investment. This is a large investment. So that's what we really want to make sure we're doing well for our clients.
And Lori, what are you doing relative to, helping me negotiate the best price?
I always contact the listing agent and find out, if there's any leeway in the price. And I usually will ask them if they'll accept escalation clause, which is something where it kind of assures your buyer that they're not paying a penny more in case they get into a situation where they're just up against one other one, like on ranch properties, and they don't want to lose it. I will sometimes encourage them to go in with an escalation clause. So they go in, somewhat, but close to the list price, but not all the way unless they have to. A lot of it is comps, comparables. As these girls were talking, you look at the other comparables in the neighborhood and kind of you keep them honest, especially if you're not in a competitive situation. And then you can, when you submit the offer, you can use those comparables to say, hey, here's why we came up with this price. And we noticed that, this carpeting needs replaced, or the roof's not in great shape, or whatever, and so we don't have to always pay full price. It just really, really depends on the neighborhood and given the situation and who you're up against.
Whether you're looking at a new condo versus a 50-year-old home, I assume would be a totally different process.
Well, right. And I mean, even in this balanced market, there are some competitive situations where you're up against one. And I just want to make sure that my buyer gets that home once they find it. And I don't want it lost. So if they don't have to be that competitive, then they don't. But you don't find out unless you ask questions to the listing agent and say, how many other offers are on the table and those kinds of things that the lay person on their own cannot find those kinds of things out.
Debbie, what are you offering of value to buyers?
So I do a buyer's consultation before taking buyers out. And what I do is I have a questionnaire that we meet in my office. I've got this huge conference room and this great screen. And we sit down and really talk about what their lifestyle is that they want to achieve. Like, do they want trails? Do they have dogs? Do they need a big fence? Where are they at for the perfect lifestyle for that particular client? Then once I've achieved that understanding, then what I do is I go through active listings on the screen. I show them, this is a ranch style home, meaning single level. This is a tri-level. These are where the stairs are. This is what this typically looks like. This is a typical two-story. And once I start to really delve into those type of preferences, I'm really isolating properties that really meet their criteria before we go driving around and spending hours and hours and days. I've really helped them to identify probably the perfect home as far as the layouts and those types of things. Then once we achieve that, then we start looking at design elements within those same properties. Do you like granite? Do you like dark cabinets? Do you like quartz? Whatever those preferences specifically are, then we can start to drill down into available properties, and I can set a search criteria that really helps them to eliminate a lot of the noise. Because if they go on, the typical Zillow, Redfin, XYZ, what they're finding is they like the design element to the point that they're not really focusing on the other features of the home that are going to be eventually so important.
So what most people start with is maybe where you might end. In other words, they might start with, man, I want to have that granite countertop, or I really love vaulted ceilings, but it may not be the right property. When the only one out there that has vaulted ceilings and granite countertops have many other issues, right?
Right. And then, of course, like everyone else is saying, when we actually go see the property, which the dichotomy between what the photos are online and what the actual experience are is mind-boggling. You can look at a perfect house online and walk in and then figure out that the backyard actually has the high tension power lines. Right? So you never really understand exactly what that property's like until you visit it, but you can eliminate a lot of those initial shiny pieces. And then of course, what am I seeing? Foundation issues, how much damage does the roof look like it has? Are there diseased trees? Things that are going to be costly down the road that shiny granite may or may not, expose at the first part.
Laverne, what value are you really bringing to buyers, do you find?
I think negotiating price, negotiating inspection items, and just making sure that what they buy, that they're completely happy with. And, sometimes there's so many things that the buyers don't think about. I mean, I just negotiated, my buyer was like, I didn't even think about that when we were talking about the inspection. So I did get her for the seller to cover for a 1-year home warranty. She didn't think about it. She didn't ask about it. We did talk about, the aged HVAC that were fine, but they were aged. And so when, I threw that in our inspection objection, she was like, gosh, I didn't even think about that. So there's so much that the buyers, they're thinking about so many other things that's why they hire their buyer's agent to ask those questions that they don't know that they can ask or that they need to ask.
Carrie, how about you?
Well, and I think there's a lot of things that our clients will never know that we do. And if we were to sit here and itemize everything, we would have a long, boring show, frankly. So there's a lot of things that they don't even know that we do. And it's funny, one of the things that, makes me laugh is when we do those buyer's appointments, like were mentioned here, is a lot of times our clients say something totally different in a home than at our buyer's appointment. They might say, all I want is new construction, I want a ranch or a 2-story. And ultimately, what do they end up? Older home that's a tri-level in a completely different area. So our responsibility and the value that we bring is we hear what they say in the property. So it might be things they don't even know that are important to them. And so that's really an unwritten value that we provide to our clients as well.
And Lori, last but not least, what value are you providing?
Well, I agree with Carrie. I think it's a process. I think a lot of times these buyers don't know in the buyer consult, the initial buyer consult, like everyone's talking about, that what they really want. And they grow into knowing what they want as they see some of these things. And like Carrie said, I had someone from the South, and they moved here and they wanted a mountain views and a 2-story, and they ended up with a lake view and a ranch, and it was the perfect home for them. But yeah, so it's a process, and I always ask my buyers, try to narrow down. This really streamlines the process to come up with your top 5 to 7 non-negotiables in order of priority, and try to agree with your spouse or significant other. And that really streamlines the process. In other words, you won't buy this home unless it has these things in that order. The other thing I do for my clients, and I've done this especially in years past when we've had low inventory, but even now in the balanced market as inventory is improving, there are some of my buyers that want in a specific neighborhood only. And we all are work for a company that has 15 offices throughout Colorado to network with and find out, where are these homes coming on that have not hit the market yet. And I will go to door to door and just say, hey, look, I'm not just soliciting. I am literally trying to find a home for my buyers. I have qualified cash buyers who want to move in, want to live here. And I'm just wondering if you know of anyone in the neighborhood who's thought of moving. And I've literally found 2 homes that way for my buyers. So that's another way.
So you're doing work. You're not just driving them around. And I think that's always the misconception, is that what are you doing for your money? And obviously there's a lot of things going on. Something that came up as you guys were talking that I'm constantly telling my photographers is the walls have ears. And it's amazing how many people and agents that I talk to who say, oh my gosh, we lost the home because my buyer was making comments about the home, and they really loved the house, but they were kind of nitpicking while we were inside. Do you guys counsel your clients about talking about the house while you're in the house, or how does that go? Laverne, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have literally, while we're together, I'll send a text to my buyers. I'm like, there's cameras everywhere. And then I could see my client looking at their text and reading my text saying there's cameras, let's be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think,
Rick.
Yeah, Carrie.
First and foremost, I would just want to jump in here. First and foremost, we want our clients to be comfortable and relaxed in a home, because when they're comfortable and relaxed, they can really get the feel for the home, see how they're going to see themselves living in there and utilizing it in day-to-day living. But I think a lot of times there's some tips that we get as far as when we're walking up to a property, if it's going to have cameras in it, maybe if it's got a ring, we just kind of, set that expectation. Just be cautious what you say on this particular property. But technically, if they are going to be recording us while we're in the home, technically they're supposed to disclose that to us, and their realtor really should be letting us know prior to the showing if that's happening. Now, does that happen all the time? Of course not.
No, but I assume on the listing side, it may not hurt to hear some of that feedback as well from your seller telling you what they heard from some buyer that walked through, and that might be some good feedback too. But obviously, they should probably know what's going on. And so, Lori, are you working with the inspectors, with the appraisers? How does that work?
So the buyer's agent does get very involved with the inspection and shows up for the findings at the end to help their clients figure out, what items are worth asking for. And many times I have to coach my clients and explain to them, it is major items of, health and safety, which would be like, radon, and then functionality. How is the HVAC functioning? And so forth. But so yes, there's a lot. We get very involved in the inspection. We do not get involved at all. It would be a conflict of interest for us to be there when the appraiser is there. However, the listing agent would meet an appraiser there.
Okay.
So it's yeah. So, but we do get very involved. In fact, the inspection, as we've mentioned here, it's one of the paramount aspects of the negotiation process of the transaction itself. It kind of is a determining factor. Are those buyers going to move forward after that inspection or not? So it's huge.
So, Debbie, do the inspectors actually, we'll probably have a whole section just on inspections one of these days, but in general, do the inspectors deal with roofs? Or since we always have issues with roofs in this state from our hail damage, do you advise them to get a roofer to come look, or is it just something the inspector does?
Great question. I think the answer to that is, how many days do I have between the inspection objection and the inspection resolution? Because a typical home inspector will, depending on what type of roof, they'll either get on the roof and do a physical inspection, or if it's a stone-coated steel roof or something that's a little bit more delicate, I guess, for weight. Sometimes they'll get a drone and they'll go up there. If they see no issues, then you don't need to have an additional inspection. But yes, I have many, many cases where you have a roof damage that is significant enough that it either is going to need to be replaced, repaired, or some other modification. And of course, that is where the negotiation really starts, because is the seller going to put it onto their insurance company or through their insurance company? If they're going to go through the insurance company, who pays the deductible? Is it going to be only the seller? Is it going to be tried to be split? If they're getting a new roof, does the buyer, maybe contribute to a little bit of that deductible so that they can get a new roof? So there is a lot of roof damage that does come into the negotiations, and it's very important to have separate contractors that you can rely on, that they know you, and they will come out kind of at a moment's notice, and you have a very good track record with those particular contractors. Much better for that particular buyer, because you kind of have it all laid out. Exactly in what order that you should do that based on the timelines of the deadline. So
you're doing recommendations as well for some of those, either inspectors, roofers, other people who might be able to give an estimate, because obviously the listing agent has their own, right? Do you provide that too, Debbie?
I do. So as an example, and I'm sure everybody's going to agree, let's say one inspector says that the roof is fine, and the listing agent's inspector says, no, or the other way around, sorry. Buyer's agent says, no, the roof is terrible, we have to replace the whole thing. And then the listing agent's contractor says, no, it's fine, it's just a little bit of minor repair. By having those individuals available and being able to connect those to the buyer, we can go back out and basically get a tiebreaker. And then, of course, the negotiation starts with the listing agent. This is what our contractors found. And, that's where the negotiations really can benefit the buyer by having those additional contractors that, yes, I recommend.
And Laverne, what do you do relative to helping with the whole lending situation?
Well, again, working with somebody that's reputable, being aligned, as we, have all this time in the business, we do find people that we are reputable and we know we want to work with them. And we also find people that's like, you know what, run. When you see their names, run away. So it's, with your lenders are the same thing, is just making sure that, there's a couple of lenders that I love, and I'm like, they're my first priority. Some people, of course, have their own relationships with their own lenders, but I do sort of say, okay, who's your lender? Let me talk to your lender. Let me let that lender know that we are all in a team. We all, want the same thing for the client. So I always reach out to the lender that the buyer's working with, just to make sure that we can work together moving forward, because there's going to be a lot of conversations. And I need to make sure that that lender is going to be available for us.
I've heard many a situation where it comes down to the end and the lender's agent or the buyer's lender doesn't get it right and you either have to delay it or you have to pull rabbits out of your hat. And maybe on our Halloween show, we can talk about horror stories around that. Carrie, what other tips do you have for somebody looking at what they should be looking for in a buyer's agent?
I think one of the things to keep in mind, like has kind of been mentioned here, is lifestyle. So do I need to be in a particular school zone for my children to go to this particular school? Do I want to be within a 20-minute commute from work? So there's some different things along those lines that are really important for us to help in that conversation and to get our clients thinking about as far as that goes. Especially, I think commute's important. I mean, these are lifestyle things that they need to be thinking about. Obviously, I'm here in Northern Colorado, so our commute time is more distance as opposed to there in Denver, where it might just be traffic-wise. So it's just those variables that we need to keep in mind and encourage our clients to be thinking about. There's other variables that we like to encourage our clients to keep in mind. It's like, if there's stucco on a house, maybe we need a stucco inspection, we need a sewer scope. There's definitely a lot of different variables that we're just here to help support our clients and guide them along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody, Laura, you have anything else you want to add?
Well, yeah, one thing I was going to add is a lot of times I come across situations where buyers are either upsizing or downsizing, and they're kind of stuck because they don't really want to buy a house before they've sold their house and so on and so forth. So I connect them with a lender that qualifies them and sees if they're able to be qualified non-contingently, meaning they could buy a house without having to sell their house, which really eases some pressure, because there's a lot of pressure if you have to sell yours within 5 days of going under contract of another one you find. So that is a definite thing I'm running into, because I work with a lot of people that are either upsizing and increasing their families or downsizing from the big family home and baby boomers, and they just don't want to have to take, cut off more than they can chew and have all that stress. So that's a thing that I help them navigate through. The other thing I was going to say is I've come across a lot of roof situations. And oftentimes, the listing agent could have had someone jump up and offer a 5-year certification. But as a buyer's agent, I always recommend the buyers get their own contact. Usually I'll give them a couple and have a roofer for free. They're always willing to jump up on a roof before their inspection objection is due and see how that roof is, because you can get 2 entirely different opinions from 2 roofers. You can even get 2 entirely different opinions from 2 insurance adjusters. One person from an adjuster from the same insurance company could deny, and another one could approve it. I've literally had this happen in the last couple transactions. So roofs are very tricky to navigate through, and they definitely need the help of a buyer's agent to do so.
Well, it sounds like, and we'll continue this discussion on future episodes, I'm sure, but it sounds like having somebody who knows what they're talking about and has done it a few times can help you find that right home for you. And obviously, these four ladies have done it a little while, so they can help you out. But you really want to interview a buyer's agent as much as you do a listing agent, because you're going to be working with them potentially for a while to find that perfect home for you. Showing your property at its best online is one of the first of many important steps to getting your home sold. At Rockin Media, we provide you with the best quality photos taken by staff photographers, not contractors, who process your photos individually. We use our proprietary Flash HDR process, which combines the natural look of HDR with the color accuracy of Flash, along with properly exposed windows. Rockin Media's HDR process is clearly exceptional. Find out more and schedule online at rockinmedia.com. On this rental report, Rick Machle from Real Property Management is here to tell us about great places to look if you're looking to rent. Hi, Greg.
Good morning, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great. So tell me, what are some great values, great places to look?
You know, it's a great question. So if we look at the history of Colorado rental properties in the last, say, 17 to 20 years, we had great windows of opportunity in North Aurora when there was foreclosure activity going on 2008 to 2012. And then right behind that came some good foreclosure activity that was happening over in Green Valley Ranch, Montbello. And so people were capitalizing on that. The interesting part now, if we look up and down the Front Range, there's not so much great little pockets like that as there are entire communities where everything is a reasonably good deal. And so when I start at the north, let's talk the Loveland Fort Collins area, people are looking more and more extended than they ever were. So right in Loveland, right in Fort Collins, those are challenges, but people are moving out to Greeley, people are moving out to Severance, out to Windsor, those kinds of things. In the Denver area, we're seeing the same thing. People moving out to Strasburg, Bennett, Byers, some of those areas. Frederick and Firestone have become good rental areas, i.e. the purchase price is good relative to what it'll rent for. And then down in Colorado Springs, anything that is over on that east side of town that pushes out towards the airport, anything in that direction, investors are still doing really, really well in those types of areas.
And if I'm looking just at a condo, where would you say, and Denver metro area, where would you say is the best place to start looking?
Yeah, great question. So the key when you're looking at condos and maybe even townhomes is how close you are to a light rail line.
Okay.
There are so many components that all point to ease of access. How quickly can you get to the Denver Tech Center? How quickly can you get to downtown Denver? That's our two primary areas where there's jobs and good consolidation of jobs. And so a lot of folks are trying to get as close as they can to light rail lines. Tons of condos on those light rail lines.
And what about a house? Single family, detached.
Yeah, great question. Those you'll have to move a little bit further out, and you'll probably have to move away from some of the light rail lines to be able to do that. Although, if you can at least get yourself to one of those, you can still get down to Rockies baseball game, watch Charlie Blackmon retire, a little Nuggets action starting up, catch some concerts, etc.
Sounds good. Well, it looks like there are still opportunities out there, obviously, for rentals. And if you're looking or if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to Greg or his team. And next week, I think we should talk about things to consider when renting. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. We'll chat through that.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again. So today I want to talk about the pros and cons of living in the suburbs, and I'm going to start off with Carrie on this one because she's up north and they have a lot of burbs and outer burbs up there in the Fort Collins, Greeley area. So what are some of the pros of living in the suburbs?
Well, I would say you definitely have a lot of newer construction out there. So the closer you are to the city center, obviously it builds out. So the older homes are in more of the city center out here. So if you like new construction and that's something that you're looking for, definitely living in the suburbs is a huge plus. Also, one of the things that I think people find appealing is when you're moving to a newer neighborhood, everybody around you is moving in as well. So you're all starting from the ground floor as far as connecting with your neighbors, making those friendships. So that's a great benefit and a bonus to living in the suburbs.
Laverne, how about out west or anywhere? What are your ideas of the pros of living in the burbs?
Suburbs are fabulous. I mean, they're just so wonderful for community involvement. And, now with the holidays coming up, especially Halloween, you have so many, neighborhoods do little parades, costume parades throughout the neighborhood. And there's just so much community involvement in the suburbs. Not that they're not, down in the city, but you just, if you want to reach out and be active, you can in your suburbs and get involved in your community. And, even if your kids have aged out of schools, you still can be involved in, what's going on in the local area. So suburbs are they're wonderful. I live in the suburbs.
and Lori, what's interesting is that the burbs have almost kind of migrated some of the city aspects into their lifestyle, haven't they? With the mini areas, and I call them almost Disney World cities, where they just pop up cities.
Right. No, I definitely agree. I think, you've got, so I am up in the Broomfield area, but there's the Broomfield Parade. And yes, there's a lot of community involvement. They have progressive dinner parties within neighborhoods and so forth like that. And then, I'm like 10 minutes from a little downtown Lafayette, 10 minutes from downtown Louisville. So you really have, even though you're in the suburbs, you're close to shopping and great restaurants and all the kind of amenities that people live in the city for. And yet it's quieter. Like nighttime is really quiet. So people that enjoy their peaceful, quiet enjoyment of that, they belong more in the suburbs rather than the cities.
And Debbie, down in the southeast, that you have some great suburbs down there. They're more established in a lot of parts of aren't they?
Yes, and I think that a lot of the newer suburbs are starting to really focus in on mixed use, meaning that you've got condos, you have townhomes, you've got larger footprint properties, you have a smaller properties, and they're all within the same little suburb. And that's really been very interesting to see, some of the boutique stores come in. We've got Castle Rock, which of course has an old town that then comes out, and it's soup to nuts. You can have something that's small that would be great for lock and leave, or these massive properties that have land and mountain views, and it's all within those suburbs. So yes, that's Southeast has got a lot to offer in that regard.
So, Carrie, one of the things when we were younger, which was a long time ago for me, I'm not speaking for you, but for me, it was a long time ago. Suburbs, there was nothing out there. And the burbs have really changed, haven't they? As far as amenities and shopping and things like that.
Absolutely. Actually, they're a lot closer to some of those big box stores. So, here, it's one of those things we have more of the traditional, like the Costco's and the super Walmarts, which are really nice when you're looking at affordable items and getting plugged in that way. Whereas a lot closer into the major hubs of the cities, you get those little boutique things. So here in Northern Colorado, we're just a little bit more spread out. And so you have access to those larger box stores, which are always helpful.
And dining opportunities have also expanded, right, Laverne?
Yeah, although, suburbs, I think there are some restaurants, I think, kind of struggle in smaller suburbs.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to pull them in and keep them. I know in our area on the west side, we've had a lot of turnovers, especially since COVID with some restaurants. But, it is nice that, there's always your community or your neighborhood pizza joint or your, those places that you could go to real quick. And, what's kind of cool about the suburbs is generally you run into somebody that you know there.
But Laverne, one of the things we're really excited about, obviously living in Colorado, is the burbs have great parks and open spaces, don't they?
Well, as a matter of fact, planning and zoning, when a developer is developing into a certain neighborhood, planning and zoning, the county planning and zoning requires specific percentages of open space and trails. So most neighborhoods will, within, just not far from your front door, you can grab a trail and go on a bike ride, go on a hike. And they're in most of the suburban neighborhoods, lots and lots of trails.
And Lori, what other items do you like about being in the burbs?
Well, I love that you can just walk anywhere you want for miles or walk around lakes and the parks. And like Laverne said, there are a lot of those well-planned walking trails that you can take for bikes and walks for miles. So I've really enjoyed that. I also enjoy the safety I feel here. It's just like it seems like, maybe it's not, but it seems like, crime rate's lower and that kind of thing. And you do know you can't walk around these areas and not know someone. And so everybody it feels very much like a community. And I enjoy that.
So a lot of great pros. I think we should hop over to cons. And one of the ones that comes to my mind, and somebody was talking about how a lot of times people move into the neighborhoods at the same time, but it would seem like, Debbie, then they can actually grow out. In other words, I come into a lot of neighborhoods where you can tell the people have been there 30 and 40 and 50 years because they love the neighborhood, but it could also probably be a con if you're looking for if you're a young family looking to move in, correct?
Well, I think that it's one of the downsides is that you don't really know what the neighborhood is going to turn into or the suburb is going to turn into or evolve into. So as an example, if you were looking in an older neighborhood that's been established and it's 30 or 40 years old, you kind of see who your neighbors are going to be. You already have a good idea of what restaurants are going to be there, what trails are available. The trees will be, mature trees, and you're going to have a little bit better sense of how that neighborhood evolved. And for a new suburb, you really don't know that yet. You don't know how the trees are going to look in 20 years and what houses are going to look like in 20 years, how people will take care of their homes. That type of a vibe you don't get from the initial suburb.
Well, I know that when I moved into our new place in Aurora, we had another builder came in who will remain nameless, but they came in and didn't build as nice a home, and it really hurt our value. So it's having a little bit of an established area can also be of benefit, it sounds like. Carrie, what are some of the other cons? It seems like if you don't want a short commute, that might be one.
Well, I think definitely one of the cons of being in the suburbs, maybe one of those newer subdivisions, is as far as newer subdivisions typically have an HOA or a metro taxing district. And a lot of times in those suburbs, we don't know what those ultimate costs are going to be. So a lot of times there's a lot of variables. Maybe there wasn't enough in the initial budget put in for maintaining different things like green spaces, open spaces, maintaining the pool. So I think that's definitely a con in that there is a little bit more fluctuation in those prices.
And Lori, what are some of the other cons that you've found?
I would say driving. Yes, you have access to a lot of the trails and parks and some restaurants, but like if you want to meet friends downtown Denver or Tech Center or Boulder, you have to be prepared to kind of drive 30 minutes pretty much anywhere, or 30 minutes to the airport and that kind of thing, versus If you're right in the heart of downtown, it's a little bit different. So the commute is one. The other thing, I guess, to piggyback off of what Carrie said, is the downfall, I think, is being in a brand new neighborhood and it's taking 6 more months to build it out, and you're just in the midst of a construction zone for that duration. That's kind of a negative.
Yeah, that was not fun.
That's the noise, yeah.
Laverne, any cons on your side? What are you thinking?
Well, I want to go back to the HOAs, and there's just definitely some neighborhoods do not have HOAs, and some people do not want to live in a community that has an HOA. That's fine. But when you do that, it's like, let's drive around the neighborhood. Let's just see what this neighborhood has to offer. If you do choose a neighborhood that does have an HOA, can you abide by those rules? I mean, if you've got a commercial vehicle that you're driving, sometimes you're not able to, park that commercial vehicle into your neighborhood. So there's with the HOA, you've got to know, if you want to live in an HOA, there are rules, which are good rules. I mean, they actually maintain values of your neighborhood. But if you don't want to live in an HOA, know that, and then let's see what you're going to get. So I think that's something that you definitely want to study.
But Carrie, if you're living in a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA, it may look great when you move in, and that could be one of the cons too, is you get somebody who moves in next to you and decides not to play by any rules, right?
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than your neighbor changing their car oil on their front lawn, or I had a great property still prevalent in my mind all these years later, great downtown property and no HOA, and the house next door was painted this bright turquoise. And that's not common in our area. Maybe in some other parts it is. And so it just makes that resale really challenging. So, the HOAs, I think all of us have heard a lot of horror stories too, from people moving here from different areas. Maybe Arizona's got different stringency and regulations that they employ. So it's just really important to know what's going to be your priority as far as that goes.
So that could be a con, but it's more of a con of whether you go HOA versus non-HOA versus burbs versus, say, city or living in the foothills. So maybe I shouldn't have brought that up. Debbie.
Well, I was also going to say lot size is one thing. So when you purchase a property, brand new, let's say it's a brand new suburb community, what you might find is that you might be the last, the house that is being built on the last street. And right then and there, you have this like smaller lot, typically, like usually around 7,000 square foot or 6,500 square foot lot. And it appears like you're going to have this great mountain view or something. And then as that community gets built out, it might be that the house behind you is a 3-story house or a walkout basement house, and it might obstruct the view in a way that you weren't anticipating, even though you knew somebody was going to build a house right behind you, until you actually see it, being resurrected from the ground kind of thing. You really just don't have a good sense of what that is going to look like until it's completely built out.
Well, the suburbs have a lot of pros and cons, and if you want to hear more about it, I'm sure these ladies would love to talk to you about those as well. And so let's, I'm going to go back and finish that one up. So it sounds like the suburbs have a lot of pros and cons, and one of the best things about speaking with one of these ladies is they know even more than what they've been able to talk about today. And I'm here with Nancy Alexander from Guaranteed Rate Affinity, and we are talking interest rates, which are the big hot topic right now because everybody is thinking, well, I heard a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago the interest rates went down. So Nancy, why does that not impact mortgage rates?
Good question. So remember, the news has about 30 seconds to do each spot that they do, right? You and I have talked about this before, Rick.
Yeah.
And so in turn, the interest rate they're talking about, and we've talked about this on the show as well, that it is the federal funds rate, right? That's the rate they control. And what that rate is that it is the rate that banks pay for overnight depository protection if they're not meeting their depository requirements, right? You remember from way back when. And so in turn, how does that rate affect us? Because it affects retail money. Like I said, we've talked about this. HELOCs, car loans, home loans, credit cards, etc. Right? And so does it affect interest rates though? Mortgage interest rates. The bond is what affects mortgage interest rates. It's the yield on a 10-year bond is what rates are going to run directly or in correlation with is that yield. So remember, there's a price of a bond, there's a yield of a bond. As the price goes up, the yield goes down, or vice versa, right? There's an inverse relationship. We're looking at that yield.
Okay. So it's basically shorthand, and as we've all probably been hearing, that interest rates on mortgage rates have been going down for how long now?
Gosh, at least 2 months, 2.5 months. Yeah, that we're watching them come from 7.5, right? 7.75. At one point, they were up against 8. They got into the 8s for a little bit, but yeah, no, they've been coming down nicely.
So what should we be watching? Because I want to be an educated consumer, and if the news is all about Fed funds rate, which of course impacts car loans and credit cards and, I guess personal loans, things like that, which is important to keep track of, but it doesn't necessarily impact mortgage rates because it's the bond rate. Is there anything?
Right. Google the yield.
Okay.
Of the 10-year bond. And as that yield is dropping, I believe on Friday, that yield was sitting at about 3.7, almost up against 3.8. As that yield drops, the interest rate will drop. The only thing that makes the rate kind of take a little hike and then come back down again is that one of the 26 indices that comes out every month is not favorable. So whether that is employment, whether that's GDP, whether that's PPI, CPI, etc., there's 26 indices, but you can find all of this information, right, Rick? You can Google anything.
Sure.
Right? If you can follow the yield on the 10-year, and as you see that dropping, rates are going to continue to follow that yield. That's my best answer.
Okay, so just Google 10-year bond rate, and then maybe watch the trend, because it's obviously not going to be apples to apples, but it may be a trend.
Yeah,
Correct.
Watch the trend. Yeah.
Well, awesome. How about next week we talk about when should you consider refinancing now that rates are coming down? If you did it at the top of the market a few months ago or 6 months ago or, even a year. And then we can see what's the best time to refinance and how to figure out when you hit a break even. How's that sound?
That's perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Well, if you want to get a hold of Nancy, you can do so by reaching out to her at the number on the screen. And I appreciate, Nancy, you joining me every week, and we'll see you next week. So our first property for sale today is in Broomfield. Lori, tell us about this home.
So this home is lovely ranch style home in the Falls at Legend Trail, tucked within the Broadlands. It's 2-bedroom, 3-bath with a finished basement, really smart floor plan, 1472 square feet upstairs, and then another 930 finished square feet in the basement with a 3/4 bath. It's kind of a nice little rec room down there. It has all new paint throughout, including the ceilings, and new carpeting on the main level. So it's a great home for someone who's looking to downsize into a ranch style property.
Well, this looks awesome. If you want to see this property, please reach out to Lori, and I'm sure she'd love to show it to you. And our next listing is up in Loveland. I say up in Loveland for Carrie. It's down in Loveland because she's in Fort Collins. So tell us about this property.
So I want to introduce you to 427 East 11th Street in Loveland. Now, this is a fantastic early 1900s home where you are so close to downtown Loveland. You can stroll to the Foundry, walk, bike, etc. So it's really a great proximity. It is 3 beds, 2 baths. It's got 2 living areas. So you have this great primary suite on the main, which is different for a 1900s home.
Yep.
And so it's beautifully updated, new carpet, fresh paint, hardwood floors, wood burning fireplace, which is pretty rare nowadays.
Yep.
And so it's got this great 2-car detached garage as well, which is oversized with alley access. And then you've got a bonus little separate workshop or storage space back there that you can enjoy your hobbies. And you can see here this oversized patio, which is perfect for entertaining. And we have a lot of great privacy with the mature trees and privacy fence there as well. So definitely you're going to want to hop in and see this one listed at $550,000.
Well, that's great. And remember, the prices are subject to change, and they're valid for the day that we're recording this, which happens to be September 30th. So thanks, Carrie. And another great listing is over in Englewood, and Debbie Jacobs is listing this home. Tell us about this home.
Thank you, Rick. Welcome to 6141 South Geneva Court in Englewood, Colorado. This property is approximately 4,100 square feet. It has 5 bedrooms, including 4 on the upper level and 1 on the main level. The kitchen is absolutely off the charts. We've got a beverage cooler. We have Wolf cooktop. We have Thermador for double ovens. We have a Miele dishwasher, and this property has had an amazing expansion onto the back patio. So your outdoor living in Colorado is really accentuated by a built-in grill, and it backs up to Arapahoe Lake trails, which is wonderful. You can see the tall windows that are a feature of this particular property, as well as a gas insert fireplace, and then the natural beams and upgrades throughout the entire property. Little loft area there. And check out this backyard. You can really see exactly how it's backing up to the trails, and it's got this beautiful landscaping associated with it.
It's really awesome. And it's really close to the DTC, right?
It is. It's just, as you can see here in this photo, it's just minutes from the Denver Tech Center. Maybe 7 minutes, I would say. This is located in the Cherry Creek School District, which is important to some individuals. It is in the Arapahoe Lake community, which has has tennis courts, clubhouse, spa, little pool, and of course you can just walk through the trails in the community and get there pretty immediately.
Well, this one went under contract right away after a couple of days, and but I assume you're taking backup offers, correct?
Yes, so we put it on the market. I put it on the market Thursday morning. Showing started on Friday. We had multiple showings and multiple offers by the end of the day. And of course, that just is representative of having such a great property that shows very well. The sellers have done an amazing job of making sure that the property was tidy and really ready to show. And of course, marketing never hurts, Rick, never hurts.
Well, this is a great property, and if you want to see it, give Debbie a call, and I'm sure she'd love to show it to you. Thanks, Debbie. And finally, let's go out and look at Laverne's home for sale. Well, it's not her home, but a home that she's listing out in Lakewood. Tell us about this one, Laverne.
Hi, thank you, Rick, and welcome to 7928 West Harvard Drive in Lakewood, Colorado. This is in the Westgate community. This home was built in 1967, and I just call this home timeless charm. It is just, like I said, super charming. It is impeccably cared for. The same family has owned this home since 1971. It's a tri-level with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. They've replaced the windows and the doors in the past. The countertop was replaced, quite a while ago. It's got a beautiful wood burning fireplace with a stone wall. The rooms are generous size rooms, just really big and spacious. This home has your private back patio. It has an upper level deck off the primary bedroom. We've got plantation shutters throughout the property. The yard is super private with mature trees surrounding it. And this, I think the bonus with this particular property is that it's located just steps away from Bear Creek trails. And you could just, if you're a runner, a walker, if you have a dog to walk, you're just going to go take a couple of turns and then you're on the trails. And this is just, you could just lose yourself for miles and miles out there.
Great open space out there in Lakewood.
Great open space in Lakewood. This is priced at $745. Again, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an oversized garage, 2-car oversized garage. And we just put it on the market on Friday.
Well, you'll want to give Laverne a call if you want to see this home, or should I say when you want to see this home. It looks awesome. Thanks, Laverne. Well, another great show. Appreciate everybody being on today. And if you want to get a hold of each of them, feel free to reach them at the phone numbers on the screen. And next week, we are looking forward to another great show. And you can also listen to the show on your favorite podcast location, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or many of the other podcasts. And to watch previous episodes with a lot of great information, be sure to go to theproshow.com. So I appreciate your time today, and everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.